like to call our meeting to order. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
And I am to read a few things to you. Let's begin with these words. In accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the Concord Cemetery Committee is conducting this meeting today, April 7th, 2021 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued April 1, 2020, amended May 7th. This meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk. I ask that all cemetery committee members, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their mics unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand by hitting the *9 on your phone, or select raise your hand option by your name in the list of participants. If you're recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We will start with an attendance roll call of committee members. When I announce your name, please reply. So I'll begin with myself, Paul Cook, I'm here. Andrea Solomon.
Here.
Thank you, Andrea. Jerry Susi.
Here.
Thank you, Jerry. Leo Carroll.
Here.
And thank you, Leo. And Brian Davidson.
Here.
All right, so we have a full complement of our committee. Thank you, Andrea, for signing the deeds every month. The next proposed meeting is May 5th. That's the first Wednesday in May, 2021. Committee members, is that a date agreeable with all of you?
Yes.
All right. Now we go to A5, approval of minutes. I spoke with our superintendent, Aaron McCloskey. He wants to do a few more edits on that, so we will address the minutes and approving them next time. Now it's time for me to make my chair comments. First of all, I would like to thank Aaron McCloskey and Anna Trout and Justine St. John for setting up these virtual Zoom meetings. It's a lot more fun, I think, meeting in person, but circumstances have not allowed that. This has been a pretty good substitute. And so thank you for all the effort that you put into setting these things up. I know it takes a little work. This scene behind the scenes, nobody knows what you do, but this is the result. It works, so thank you. I also want to welcome Rod Rydell. Rod, where are you? I see Rod Rydell and Rebecca Purcell, are you here?
I'm here.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
Well, Rod and Rebecca both submitted electronic green cards, and they're interested in serving on the cemetery committee in the future. Now, with no further ado, I want to turn to our superintendent's annual or monthly report. So Aaron, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent and Tree Warden for the town of Concord. So during the month of March, we had 8 full interments, 1 cremation, and 22 single grave lot sales. It's pretty quiet March otherwise, kind of getting ready for spring cleanup, getting ready to contact and work with Einstein Solutions as our landscaping contractor for Sleepy Hollow. And Tish has been busy kind of maintaining graves that might have settled out in the wintertime and cleaning up some sites. We've put out a news notice to all residents that are signed up for that notification to remove holiday decorations. And that was done, and Tish has been kind of busy preparing for that spring cleanup process. We've also had Mayor Tree Services in the cemetery, and our CPW Park and Tree crew in the cemetery a number of days are doing quite a bit of tree maintenance, some pruning, and a few of the removals that we talked about in previous meetings, kind of before trees start to leaf out, and cemetery gets really busy with tourist activity and starting to live out the landscaping work. We want to get the tree maintenance done. So that's been most of the activities that I wanted to report on. don't know if Tisha has anything she'd like to add.
Nope, just getting ready for spring, clean up stuff, foaming, seeding, new graves, and was just starting to clean the grounds up, pick up all the winter holiday decorations.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Tish. Now, our third item on the agenda, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Casey Winslow, who was my, she was my mentor in the position of cemetery committee chair. She was chair when Andrea Solomon and I both came on. 2014, I think. It was a long time ago, Casey.
I got lucky when I recruited you, that's for sure.
Oh, Casey. Casey's son has produced a lovely documentary. It's quite brief, but I thought it was so relevant that it would be worth airing for the whole committee and everyone who's visiting. It's only about 5 minutes long. Casey, I would like to ask you to introduce it. I don't think your son could be with us today.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say he's right in the midst of just getting ready for finals. He has a class right now as we speak, and next week starts finals, so you can't really miss the class before the final, right?
Sure, sure.
It's so nice to see you, Paul.
It's nice seeing you, Casey. So Casey is standing in for her son. Casey, I'd like to ask you to introduce it, and then Aaron has set it up so that we can view it together. Okay.
It's actually kind of a little bit of a long story, right, Tish?
You're welcome to tell it.
Okay, well, I'm just going to back up a little bit to when I was on the cemetery committee for 7 years, which I absolutely loved. Almost the whole time, I feel like we were working on the restoration of the Melvin Memorial. And it was something that we always knew would get accomplished, but you know, it never did happen before I retired from the cemetery committee. And, but I always knew it would, right, Tish?
Yes.
And so then just shortly after, I'm a realtor and I had a listing on Old Farm Road in Concord. And I held an open house for the neighbors. And so to my surprise, the octogenarian up the hill who lives just at the top of Lindsay Pond Road, John Martin, who also developed the neighborhood, he came to this open house. He walks in the door. He didn't get 2 feet in the door before he said, "This is where the Melvin boys lived." I was like, what? And he said, "This is where the Melvin boys live. The house burned to the ground, but you know, this is the site of the old Melvin farm." I was shocked and really intrigued, of course, because I live very close and I thought, oh my goodness, so do I live on the Melvin land? And so then the next thing I know is we're at the rededication, the 100-year rededication where Paul was the MC and did such a beautiful job. And it was pouring rain. Many of you might have been there. It was one of the most special moments, I think, that I've ever had, you know, it was very moving. I think the rain really contributed to how moving the experience was. And when Samuel Melvin's diary was read and the last, of course, page, which I had already heard of, I was in tears, as I'm sure so many other people were as well. It's just so incredibly moving. After the dedication, you know, we were all kind of gathering around, taking a photo, which was really special with the Melvin family who had traveled up for the occasion. And I saw Tish and I said, "Tish, this is amazing. And did you know that the Melvins lived in my neighborhood?" And she said, "Yeah, I sure did." I said, "Really?" And she said, "Oh yeah, one of the original owner of that lot drew a map for me years ago. Do you remember this, Tish?" Yeah, drew a map for me, and you know, so she knew it. So I was like, wow, that's really incredible. I started doing more research. It's one of those stories that I feel like really captivates people, and it certainly did me, and I know it did Tish, because shortly after that, phone rings, ring, ring. It's Tish. And she says, "Casey, do you think you could call the owner of that property that you sold on Old Farm? And do you think you could arrange for me to come by and get some dirt?" I was like, "Get some what?" She said, "Get some dirt. I want to bring, I know Sam can't come home, but we want to bring some home to him." And of course, I mean, it's just really incredible that she would even think of that. I mean, only Tish would think of something like that. So, so sure enough, I called, no problem. The woman was really, really honored, really. She gets it, the lady that lives there. And so Tish and I, we walked over to her property with the shovel in hand. And it was a beautiful day, and we did the video. She took some dirt. I was the videographer at that time, and I just, for some reason, I decided to video the shadow as opposed to Tish digging it. So got the dirt. Next thing you know, hadn't heard a bit about it for a while. So then now you're wondering, when does my son step into this picture, right? So weirdly, my mother is 82 and she still, you know, likes to date. So she had this blind date, and she texted me and said, Kat, can you get me a map of the cemetery, Sleepy Hollow? I have this date that wants to go for a walk in Sleepy Hollow. And I said, oh, how cool is that? So I look it up, couldn't find a map. I texted Tish. She says, sure, let's meet in Concord Center in front of our office. Kevin, I see you're here too. Kevin Plotzik, in front of our office. And you know, so we met, and I said, whatever happened? You know, did you ever get the video done? Because I knew she had a lot of footage from when she traveled. And she's like, no, I'm looking for a high school kid to, you know, to do it. And I said, well, geez, you know, and only because of COVID was Ben available. He was due back the next day, basically. I'm like, well, geez, my son is studying, you know, kind of videography and interactive media, and I think he could do it. So sure enough, I introduced him to Tish, and he kind of ran with it. Tish did a great job of arranging for the narrator, and then Ben found also a great narrator to be the voice of Samuel Melvin, a friend of his, who I just felt like just completely nailed it. And but I do feel like the whole thing, I mean, it's an interesting story with some twist. But I just feel like I'd love to hear Tish give just a little bit of, you know, her perspective on that, laying out that story. It's amazing that you thought of it, Tish.
It's just something I thought to do. As soon as I read it, it's the first thing I thought to do, just to bring Sam home. Yeah.
Really?
I read his whole diary, and you just feel like you know him. I work with these people kind of every day. I work around these people every day. So I just feel like I get to know them.
Yeah, well, I know you do have a certain affinity with your constituents.
I do. They're my favorite. Yeah.
And I know that story really hit home for you.
I've just learned trying to do the restoration. I mean, I started this restoration project in 1994.
Wow.
It was a long time. We learned a lot about the family and a lot about the monument and a lot about Daniel Chester French. And it just was such an interesting story that I just felt like I knew them. They felt like family to me.
Yeah. Well, it just seems like so many people. And so now the video has over 1,000 views on it was posted on YouTube February 28th. And that's a lot of views. And I think it could even get many, many more, because it just seems like everybody that hears the story is really captured by it. And it just doesn't leave you very quickly. So anyway, so I guess we can move on to the video, unless anyone has any questions before I run it. You want me to run it, right, Paul?
I think Aaron's got it set up.
Oh, Aaron's got it. Okay.
Yeah. Aaron, do
Okay, you know, real quick, before I do that, I just want to show, oh, wait a minute. I don't even know if I can share my screen. Can I? Oh yeah, I guess I can. There's just a map. I have a map of the Melvin, you know, where they're located. And there were 2 other Melvins in Concord too. I don't know if people are interested. Maybe we can go back to it afterwards if we have time.
No, sure, Casey. Go ahead if you want.
You want me to show that? Okay, because it is interesting. I find a lot of people are really curious about where they lived. And so, okay, can you see this? Can you see the map?
Not yet, no.
No, oh no, maybe this isn't gonna work then.
Aaron, I don't know. Aaron, are we up for that? Here we go.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, now we can see it.
Okay, good. So this is a map of Concord in 1832. And there are 3 Melvins that are highlighted in yellow. This is all Lowell Road right here. And then this is where Westford Road forks to the left and Lowell Road goes straight to Carlisle. There actually is a house on the market right now, this J. Melvin house right here. It's incredibly old. It's one of the oldest houses in Concord. But that must have been, because I know that the Melvin boys, where John Martin declared that the Melvin boys lived here, that is right here. Lindsay Pond Road comes right down across from Bateman's Pond, which is Middlesex School. And it comes just straight down here. And this is a Spencer Brook, and it's just, to the northwest of Spencer Brook on Old Farm Road. And that's a Melvin. So I know that is the father of the 4 Melvin sons. And then there's a W Melvin here and a J Melvin there. So I think I love looking at old maps, and I know a lot of other people are interested in that too.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let Aaron, if he wants to go for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Casey. Aaron, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
All right, I'm gonna attempt. I just have to stop sharing
Oh, do I
Casey's
stop?
screen
Oh,
first. Yep. Hold on 1 second for me. All right. And
do we have audio?
Yes. Audio?
it's up as loud as I can do it here.
Yeah, it's hard to hear it.
Anna, can we get better audio on that?
I don't know if we're going to be able to get better audio.
Oh.
I might try it from mine. I don't know. Do you want me to try it?
Aaron,
Sure.
let's try it. Let's see if we can do it through Casey's. Maybe her audio will be better.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, let's just try it. It's worth a try, right?
Sure.
The one thing is that Ben really didn't have all the right equipment when he did this. He's actually gotten a lot better at it since he did this. And now he's worked with the equipment at the school and all that. But he may not have had the right, stuff to make it. Although on YouTube, it's certainly very
Yes, it
legible.
certainly was.
YouTube
let's
is
try
good.
this.
It might be just with,
All right, this might be better. Can you hear it?
Not too well, Casey, a bit.
It will get better, I think.
Okay.
The quiet farming community of Concord, Massachusetts in 1775 unexpectedly became what the world now recognizes as the cradle of liberty, where the American Revolution began. At the Old North Bridge, the simple farmer turned in battle when he replaced his plow with a musket. One of those farming families was the Melvins. The year is 1861, suddenly thrust into a similar time of turmoil. Asa, the oldest of the 4 sons, would succumb to his battlefield injuries at Petersburg at the age of 29. His brother John would enlist, only to suffer the same fate as he perished in a military hospital far away from his Massachusetts home. Samuel would join John. Enlisting, Samuel would only slightly outlive his 2 older brothers. The only surviving brother, James, spent his entire life dreaming of a tribute. Having found wealth in Boston and through his boyhood friendship with renowned sculptor Daniel Chester French, James's dream became a reality. A tribute, a masterpiece, a memory. Morning Victory. Located in Concord's historic Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, French's Morning Victory depicts the beauty of an angelic figure draped in the American flag. Victory serves as the sentinel watching over the 3 brothers. Morning Victory is the tribute to his brother, James and Ruth. These brothers live as an icon through stone, graciously open to the ignorant and forgetful. Their stories are not ones of triumph. Sacrifice paved the way to liberty. is Andersonville, the Confederate Army prison infinitely known for its death and brutality. More Union soldiers died in Andersonville than on the 6 most bloody battlefields of the war. Samuel Melvin was captured and brought here on June 3rd, 1864. And by September 25th, Sam was gone. His personal diary would serve as the best and most comprehensive documentation of the horrific events.
In poor spirits, but I'm getting as well as could be expected. Then I'm almost distracted. Things are dubious here indeed. All we have to console us is to hope that better things can go. I'm myself still in hell, and I've given up all hopes of hearing from home like this. While there is life, there is hope. Time must bring the welcome day. It will bring us out of the mirroring pit and set our feet upon rock. And then what happy mortals we will be. How I do long for the time to come when we can be once more men and not beasts. But it is for our country. Must be willing to sacrifice the personal for the general good. As things look now, I stand a good chance to lay my bones in Georgia. I hate to as bad as one can, but I just want to go home.
Tish Hopkins. I work at the Concord Cemetery Department. Been here for 33 years. I've learned so much about this family and so much about Sam in particular because of reading his diary that I felt like I wanted to do something for him. So I wanted to bring him some of home. I ended up going to the property where his home had been when he lived to take some dirt from what was probably his yard and bring it down to Andersonville to his grave.
The Melvin history serves as an everlasting reminder of monumental sacrifice and dedication to our country. Over 150 years later, Tish Hopkins, in her dedication to honor the deceased, has helped fulfill Sam's dying wish.
Wow.
Well, thank you
It's
all
going to
for
go to the
coming.
next video. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Casey,
Yeah.
Casey, thank you so much. That is, I would like to see if we could put that, you know, we have a place on the cemetery website for the Melvin Memorial. We have Old South, we have Sleepy Hollow, we have, and there's a place where it says Melvin Memorial. When you click that on, I think perhaps we could put a link to that.
I think that'd be so cool.
We'll see. We can see if we can do
It does
that.
certainly tell the story. It's, you know, it's short and it's, you know, it's maybe, I'm not sure, like I've seen it so many times that I didn't watch it all 1,000 though, I promise. But but I have. And so I know like every word. You too, Tish, right? You know, you know it. But I don't know when you're watching it for the first time if you really, grasp it all. I don't know if you can catch it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's very powerful. And it's also fascinating to see those scenes from the drone, both of Andersonville, all the graves, and the scene of actually looking at the Melvin Memorial from above is very
It's beautiful. It's spectacular. Just so beautiful.
Does anyone have any questions for Casey or for Tish? Well, Casey, I'm so glad that you were able. You please tell Ben that we appreciate his work, and it was wonderful to screen the documentary at the cemetery committee. I can't think of a more fitting place for us to see it.
Thank you. I'm glad we got to share it.
Yeah, and Aaron, we can talk about, maybe we can see if we can get put a connection to that site on our website.
Yeah, I'll work with Aaron Stevens to do that.
Great, thank you.
So
Thank
cool.
you, Aaron.
And I just want to say, Tish, you're just something special. It's so amazing. She honestly, she's like the gem of Concord,
She
right?
is. I tell you, walking in the cemetery, whether it's the hottest day of summer or the coldest day of winter, you'll run into Tish. She's there. She's always there. She's the hardest working gal I know. So God bless you, Tish.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
do you mind if I hang out and watch for a little bit?
Oh, no, we'd love to have you, Casey. I should defer to you.
Just like the good old days.
Yeah.
All right. So I think next we have another treat. Our friends, not too many Concord committees have a private committee that supports their work, but the cemetery committee has such a privilege. We have the Friends of Sleepy Hollow and many of their members here, along with President Kevin Plodzik, who are going to talk about a presentation they would like to make, a new project. They've done so many for the cemetery. This is their latest. Kevin wants to make the presentation, and he's got several colleagues and others with him. Kevin, take it away.
Thank you very much, folks. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. My screen is somewhat limited, so I'm not quite sure who's here. But I stand or I sit before you representing the entire board of the Friends of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, and more specifically, a volunteer, as all are, of a planning subcommittee, Susan D., Sylvie Sawyer, Priscilla White Sturgis, and Rick Fries, who, along with me, we took on the task of revisiting the 2018 Hanley Commemorative Garden that the Friends established with full support of the Cemetery Committee in honor of two very special people who worked diligently, voluntarily in the cemetery. Mr. H. Thurston Hanley, of most pleasant memory, and his wife, Carolyn Hanley, who continues to reside in Concord. They took on the responsibility of caring for certain areas in the cemetery by planting seasonal flowers. Yeah. In the days when the current assessment office was part of the cemetery cooperation, if you will, the cemetery piece, they would do the flowers and the flower boxes, etc. So we decided, we as the Friends, to honor Thurston and his wife by establishing the Hanley Commemorative Garden. It's located at the entrance or nearest to the fourth gate of Bedford Street. Mm-hmm. And when we went out there in the fall last year, we realized that a couple of things. One, that it needed revitalization. Secondly of all, it needed a focal point. It already had a stone, which we had purchased with a plaque on it saying that the place was in commemoration of the Hanleys. But it lost its focus. We probably overextended in going too far. So we said, let's take a look at refocusing. So jump to now the subcommittee who came forward. We knew we needed some expert advice. So we talked to a couple of folks who came forward with proposals, and we accepted one. And those of you who have the packet of the Hanley Garden proposal know that the firm selected is the Strawberry Hill landscaping firm. Its principal is Mr. Tom Keene, who, again, because I can't see everybody, he may be with us. He did accept the invitation to attend. And he collaborated closely with us. More specifically, he collaborated with one of the subcommittee members, Sylvie Sawyer, who put pencil to paper and took what she had conceptualized that the garden would look like. And she put, again, pencil to paper and came forward with this. I'm going to stop now and pass it over to Sylvie and ask her to share what she has proposed, working in collaboration with Mr. Keene, Tom Keene. You have in your packet, before I do that, the proposal from Tom, and in line with the town regulations, a copy of Mr. Keene's license, or insurance rather, to provide the work if we are receiving permission from the cemetery committee to go forward. So Sylvie, I turn it over to you graciously.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Hi, my name's Sylvie Sawyer. I was the one that put pen to paper with this idea. It's quite a simplistic idea. We noticed that the stone and the bench from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow were kind of isolated, and we thought that this was a way of uniting it all together and making it more of a feature. The basis behind it was to keep it simple, to keep it so that it would be very compatible with the surroundings. And the plantings are all based on plantings that already thrive and do very well in the cemetery. So the idea, you probably all, just so that everyone can see, perhaps I need to put the light on. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Most people?
Yes, that's good. That's good.
So the shape is a sort of kidney shape, and the idea is that we'll move. Tom is willing to bring the stone over, the stone bench that we already have that was donated by friends a few years ago, and incorporate that into the garden so that we have a place that you can go and sit and peruse and, you know, just generally feel at ease. It's at a slight angle so that your back is not to the stone. It's more incorporated into the garden. We have box behind the stone because the bank behind slopes up. At the moment, the stone and the bank are the same color and it kind of disappears. So a very, very slow growing box hedge is going behind the stone just to give it some emphasis. And then we have daylilies, reblooming daylilies, which will go from May to September, which frame the whole shape. And then in front of that, we have some hostas. And then in front of the stone, so as not to obscure any of the lettering, we have lily turf. And then as a border, we have the pachysandra, which is an evergreen. And if the gardeners get too enthusiastic with the lawnmower, it should survive being chopped up a little bit. And then in front of the steps, we've got some flat paving to encourage people in to sit. And basically that's the idea. The idea really is that it's plants that already do well and thrive and are quite happy to be in sun or shade. So anybody got anything they'd like clarified?
Questions, anyone? Tish, have you got any questions?
I do. I did look in the plan and it does say that you were going to try to incorporate mulch into the design. We don't allow mulch in the cemetery. So could it be done without mulch?
So the technical things are over to Tom.
Hi, well, thank you for welcoming me to this meeting. The mulch that we propose to use isn't a traditional mulch, which you see around town. It's not that red dyed mulch. This is a composted mulch, which is made from leaf matter. It's, I would say, relatively new in the last 5 years. You don't necessarily see it too often in homes because it's more for perennial gardens. Excuse my dog. But we don't necessarily need to use the mulch. We can just keep it organic with a compost material, but the mulch does help prevent the weeds. But I think as the garden gets more established, maybe next year even, the ground covers will fill in and you wouldn't need to mulch it. But being a new garden, the mulch holds the moisture for the plants, keeps the weeds down. But if
That's
it's
something we allow lot owners to do, so it's hard to justify allowing
Sure,
a plant bed to have it because then the lot owners see it and then they'll do it.
understood. Well, we could just keep, just use the organic compost and just not mulch it. I think the ground covers that are proposed should fill in pretty quickly.
May I,
Um,
may I just jump in here?
Sure.
Tish, I understand that. And I had talked as early as last year with Eric Shaw. And I told him that we were aware of the restriction, if you will. And he spoke to me in terms of sustainability in Concord and said that there could well be some exception made in light of this place, and that he would be open to such. So I just throw that out for consideration. But obviously, Tom is much more knowledgeable in that area. So I just wanted to throw that out.
It's, we can easily build the garden without using mulch. Maybe we add more plantings just so it's, a fuller garden. The ground covers, we double the amount of plants we use, so we don't necessarily need to mulch it in the end. It's a full established planting bed.
I would say that I think that if the committee decides to vote and approve, the donation from the Friends, that would be something that, the highway and ground staff, Tish, would work directly with the contractor on and kind of just looking at the materials, inspecting them and determine if they're appropriate or not. And kind of work through those finite details. I don't see that being a deal breaker, if you will. I think we can work through all that. I understand what Tom is saying. So I think we can find a material that's appropriate, that's suitable, that fits, that meets, our requirements, but doesn't establish any type of practice that we wouldn't be able to afford another lot owner in a cemetery.
Further questions? Sylvie, thank you for showing us that. Thank you, Mr. Keene. Tom, thank you. Kevin, does anyone have any further questions? Maybe you have some more, Tish, of any representatives from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow?
Paul, I do. Just regarding maintenance, at least in the first few years, getting this area established, what is the expectation for maintenance? Is there a commitment from the Friends to provide more meticulous maintenance than we would normally provide
Well,
on a specific area like this?
Oh, sorry. On the proposal, I live a 10-15 minute walk from there, and of course, I have a vested interest now to make sure that it succeeds. These are plants that do very well in my own garden through a great deal of, well, there's land at the back of where I live, and they do very well even in neglect. So the idea is that these are the type of plants that will need not constant maintenance, but just regular maintenance. There are also plants that come back on their own every year without much encouragement. And I just think probably a good feed once a year and a weed out, and I'm quite prepared to do that. And I'm sure Susan D and her husband have also volunteered. And I'm sure some of the other friends would be quite willing to.
I
Very
think
good. Thank you.
I think it's remarkable that the Friends are doing this, that they want to do this, and that they want to care for it. But as Sylvia's just told us, the D family, these are all folks who live nearby. They're busy people, but still they want to make this contribution to the cemetery. I think it's great. Any other questions or comments from anyone to the representatives from Sleepy Hollow, Friends of Sleepy Hollow?
I had a question. How are people going to access this garden? Do they have to walk through other gravesite areas to get to it, or is there a path that will be accessible to it without having to go through graves?
At the moment, the stone and the bench are along the back of the ground, of the burying ground. I believe you can walk along there. I mean, the seat has access to it from the back of the cemetery, or the back that leads up onto the road where the stone fence is. That's where the stone is, and that's where the bench is at present. So we're assuming that the fact that that was permitted to begin with, there's no, as far as I know, there are no plots along the back there. Perhaps
Thank you.
someone would know better.
I think you're perfectly correct, Sylvie. It's also the roadway is a nice walk path to approach the garden space in the with the parking on the roadway, or in there's 2 little parking slots right nearby too. May I just also say, and we put this in the proposal, that if the cemetery committee is supportive of this and encourages us to continue, we would of course go to the town to offer a gift to the town in the amount of the cost of the project, so that it's accepted, as it has been by our other projects, as a gift to the town from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow. And the support of that would come, of course, saying that we have received the proverbial okay from the cemetery committee. And you have a copy in your proposal of the cost of that.
Right, right. Further questions of Kevin or Tom or Sylvie or any other folks from the Friends?
For Tom again,
Yes,
are you planning on moving the bench yourself, or are you going to have a monument company do it?
I was going to do it myself.
Okay, we have a spec for a foundation that I'd be happy to share with you, but we'd have
Okay,
to have a foundation has to be at that level. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm assuming mostly hand tools, but if you needed to get something larger in there, I can show you how.
Yeah, I think I have a garden cart, a flat cart, that I think we might be able to just lift that bench and put it on the cart. But we also do have a small Kubota tractor, need be. But
yeah, I can show you how to get that in there.
Okay, as far as all the garden work goes, that's all handwork.
And just to be clear, this is just a memorial marker. This isn't a grave. This is just the stone originally in 2018 was just a memorial marker. And what about after 2 years? So is the Friends basically committing then for, we measure time in this cemetery by centuries, not by years. So, is this a commitment to maintain this for, the next decades to come?
So the idea of choosing the plants were plants that come back every year, and the boundary of the land is evergreen. The box at the back of the stone is evergreen, very, very slow moving. I think it takes 10 years for it to grow 2 foot sort of thing. It's very slow. And the hostas and daylilies are things that are chopped down and come back year after year. Because I'm not a native of New England, I did do a lot of research around the cemetery to see which type of plants did well with neglect, basically. And they seem to be the ones that just kept thriving no matter what you did to them. Snow, sleet, ice, whatever, drought. There they were, so I just thought that was a good choice.
All right. Any further comments or questions for our friends from the Friends?
Yeah, this is Leo. Could I ask Sylvie? So you've got Pachysandra, and you got hostas, and what was the other vegetation?
So the tallest plants at the back are daylilies, and they're reblooming daylilies, and not tall ones, but they reflower from May to September.
Oh, great. No, I think that's perfect.
Good.
Thanks for that question, Leo. Anything else? One more time.
Hello, Aaron McCloskey here again. I would just say that, CPW staff we reviewed the proposal and we're overall in support of it from an operations standpoint. So
great. Thank you, Aaron. Do we have a motion regarding accepting this plan, this project?
Yeah,
I'll-
I motion to accept it.
Leo Carroll motions to accept the Friends proposal for the Handley Garden. Do we have a second?
I'll
I
second.
second. Okay.
Andrea seconds the motion. Let's have a roll call. Brian Davidson,
Aye.
Leo Carroll,
Aye.
Jerry Susi,
Aye.
Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Paul Cook, aye. It's accepted unanimously and with great enthusiasm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hey, can I say one more thing, Paul, before I sign off?
Sure, Kevin.
You know, you mentioned earlier the collaboration between us, and I have to tell you how appreciative we are, the Friends of Sleepy Hollow, our board, because we value as much as you folks do the cemetery, and our mission is always there. The beautification, the enhancement of, and education about Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And I'm going to make one little plug here, and it's so fortunate that Rebecca Purcell is here, because next year is our 20th anniversary of keeping the mission of Sleepy Hollow. So a little advance notice. I mentioned Rebecca because it was in 2002. She came forward with the inspiration, a la the Friends of the Library in town, and said, why don't you guys do this? And lo and behold, the seed was sown, and that was 20 years ago. So I thank her publicly right now. I see her. And secondly, we'll have you watch for some special celebrations coming forth in 2022 in celebration of our 20th year of supporting Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. So that's a little bit of a teaser. So we have another subcommittee working on that. So get ready for next year. Thank you, folks, very much on behalf of the entire board and the subcommittee for approving it. Our goal would be, again, Weather and Tom, working with him for, hopefully have it all done certainly by Memorial Day this year, so that we're ready for it. Thank you again. We truly appreciate working with you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you to all the representatives of the Friends who came today. Thank you, Tom, for coming as well. This is great. It's great.
Thank you for welcoming me. Appreciate it.
No.
Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we will continue with our agenda. You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but we're going to keep, we have things we must go on to do. So D5, the oversized stone request grant lot.
So this is a request from the Grant family to put an oversized slate stone on their 2-grave lot. The height is fine, the thickness is fine, it's the width. We allow 42 inches wide. The request is for 56 inches wide, so it's 14 inches oversized in the width. And the petitioner is actually here, Karen Sprague.
I'm right here.
Was here. There you
Yeah,
are.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
muted but I've been listening. And so thank you for inviting me, Tish. You are now, I hear, the gem of Concord.
I have them all convinced, Karen, yeah. But anyway, if anybody has any specific questions, Karen would be the better person to ask.
One question, where is the site?
In the new section of the cemetery, up by my office.
Questions of Ms. Sprague?
Well, Ms. Brock, could you just provide a description perhaps of the marker that you'd like to use?
Sure. I'm going to use Sylvia's high technology and hold up my drawing. I did mail
for you.
but I hope this will work. Let's see. Let's see. I got to take off the
background, that beautiful snowy background.
Tish has a copy. Tish, can you hold
do it.
You hold it
I
up.
don't know where the camera is though.
Right. Yep.
Oh.
Up a little bit.
Oh.
Right there.
Right.
A little back.
Back a little.
Back up and to your right.
That one. There you go.
There you go. Oh. So it's a stone. It's like a big stone.
It is, it's a raw piece of slate that I went to the slate quarry and was actually invited the family to come with me. She was very excited to have the experience of finding this one marker for her mom. And when we located it, I knew it was a tad long width-wise. And I initially thought I would just clip it to be in compliance. And after the lettering was carved and I stepped back, I love the way the shoulder naturally rises, and it only extends 20 inches high. So it's not that long width all the way to the top. And I really was hoping to preserve that natural side and not have to make a saw mark. And so I asked Tish about that, and she said, you'll have to make a formal request. And so I'm asking to not alter the raw natural look of this slate boulder.
So it violates the dimensions only by being too wide, not by being too high.
Correct.
Questions, and Karen, you are the designer for the family that wants to put.
Correct. I'm a stone carver here in Rhode Island. My studio is in Situate, Rhode Island, and I do work for families across the United States. And
Jerry,
it's all, it's hand carved. Our work is drawn by hand, carved by hand. So we do have another piece there, the old family.
I think Jerry Susi has a question for you.
I'm listening.
Yeah. So is it a flat slate or is it more three-dimensional? If it's three-dimensional, almost like a mountain, how thick is it?
Jerry, it is 6 inches at the bottom. And there's actually 22 inches that gets set below ground. It's already sawn flat, but we would, like a root of a tooth, there would be 22 inches of slate root below ground. Then rising out of the earth is the 41 inches. 6 inches at the ground level, and then it tapers up to just 3 inches to 2 inches to just a very thin tape, because it is a raw piece that was blasted out of the quarry or cleaved out of the quarry. So it's natural face, but it's not a huge three-dimensional piece.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions of Karen?
Actually, this is this is Leo Carroll.
I'm gonna hold this up now that I got rid of the virtual background.
I didn't actually
Could
see
you-
it. Okay,
Oh, good.
all right, now I see it. Okay,
Okay.
great. Yeah, that looks great.
So again, Karen,
Yes.
the width, the total width is the issue. How wide is it?
52,
All right, and
52 at its natural grade.
yeah, and Tish, what is our current regulation?
42.
42. So it's 10 inches wider than the regs. Okay.
Well, this is Leo again. Tish, why was that number? Why did we settle upon that number of 42 for convenience of moving it, if it has to be lifted up or something like that? I'm trying to understand why we would have picked 42 instead of 52.
Lots themselves are only, at the time, they were 6 feet wide. So you need to have space in order for people to be allowed to do plantings next to their stones, rather than filling the grave with granite. We'd have to defer to your dad on this one, Leo, because these existed when I started here. So yeah, nothing has changed.
Yeah, but I guess
I think they're industry standards.
Yeah, if it was too wide for, say, to get like a bobcat through, if you had to carry something, then that's probably why they come up with those numbers. Okay. That's good. So I really don't see any reason why not to do it. Do you? Well, let's get this thing rolling, Paul. Let's get a motion.
Leo, good for you. Any other questions of Karen? Do we have a motion?
Yes, Leo Carroll motions that we accept this lot, the stone
Do we have,
design.
all right, do we have a second?
I second.
Andrea Solomon seconds the motion. All right, let's call the roll here. Brian Davidson,
Aye.
Leo Carroll,
Aye.
Jerry Susi,
Aye.
Andrea, yes, Jerry, okay. Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Yes.
Paul Cook, aye. All right, I think that the motion has carried unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. If you are ever near, we're 20 minutes west of Providence. You are welcome to come to the studio, have a seat, be a fly on the wall, and see the work underway. But thank you very much. You have a beautiful cemetery, and I do hope to have a relationship with you for many years and to help many families if they'd like a work of art in your cemetery.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I see the snow has disappeared behind you.
Well, you know, it's New England, you know, wait a minute, the season changes. I realized I still had the winter background on. I thought, okay, let's change it.
Thank you so much.
But that is the studio, that is our yard. And Sylvia, I was grateful to listen to the plants that you recommended that are, you know, foolproof, but are they deer proof? That's what is always, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe the friends have left, but that's a
Okay.
good question.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Tish, for suggesting I make this presentation, and I am grateful.
All right, thank you
I
very
will-
much for coming.
All right, you're very welcome.
Now we go to D6, a discussion of the monument application requirements, which seems a good segue since we were just talking about monuments. And
Paul?
Paul, you have a question from.
Oh, Susan.
I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt the flow, but I have a hard stop now because I have another meeting to go to, but it was wonderful to see you all. I'll catch up on the video, what I've missed today. Thank you.
Susan, it's always great to see you. We're sorry you have to leave early.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. So Brian wrote me not too long ago saying that sometimes we've had some sticky questions regarding monuments, and we know in the past we've also had such issues. Fortunately, they don't happen too regularly. And he was interested in perhaps adding some language to the rules and regulations under Article 5, which is to do with monuments and markers. And so I thought we might as well let him make his point and see what the committee thinks. In your packet today was included just the 2 pages that are Article 5, which are to do with monuments and markers. And so with that context, we'll let you go ahead, Brian, and tell us what you think.
Sure, thanks, Paul. This was just kind of came up from our conversations a few meetings ago. You know, there was a particular marker, and I think it had some very colorful markings on it that, you know, in the end, we all agreed after, you know, talking a little bit with the owner, we came up with a final decision and approved it. But, you know, we had, during that discussion, we came up with some other cemeteries where people had put up headstones that, you know, I think we as a group and have caused some community concern in different cemeteries. Luckily, we haven't had to deal with the issue yet ourselves. And so when we look at the rules for our headstones, really right now, the only thing we have is what we just discussed. There's different size regulations. And I think that, you know, if we were to get such an application that, you know, just didn't meet what we considered our community standards, that without a rule, the actions really seem to be arbitrary. And so, although I really do believe in the allowing people the maximum of free expression in how they mark their graves. I do think that there are moments where things rise, where again, it may, cross a line from our community standards. So I'd like to try and develop a rule that was general enough that we weren't limiting people's free expression, but also allowed us to have something that was not arbitrary, but something to point to be able to reject a headstone if we as a community didn't feel as though it was appropriate for the cemetery. So maybe Justine, I tried to draft some language, and this language really is just a jumping off point, but Justine, if you could maybe just show. So this is kind of, just a general kind of rule to have that we could point to if it ever needed to be implemented, but it states the cemetery committee shall have the authority to reject any memorial that on account of its size, type, design, inscription, quality, color, or method of construction is unsuitable for the appearance, dignity, or character of the cemetery. And again, this was just kind of a jumping off language, but I thought that having this quiver in our arrow in our quiver would be able to help us be less arbitrary if the occasion ever arose where we would have to, reject something that was based on, that was kind of violating our community standards. So thank you, Justine. I think we can just go back to the view of all folks there. So with that, I just, open up to comments or reactions and gauge the committee's feelings on the issue.
Any thoughts or questions for Brian?
Leo, you're muted. Sorry.
Hi, sorry about that. So what is it that we're concerned about, that we just won't like the design, or that what is it we're trying to keep out that other cemeteries have had and had a bad experience with?
Well, I think if you look at, say, the St. Bernard Cemetery, there's some headstones there that, I think, in our discussions, earlier meetings, some people pointed to and just said that it just seemed to really not fit the character of the cemetery, of the community, kind of, upset a number of people. I would hesitate. I don't, what I don't necessarily want to do is I want to maximize people's freedom of expression, without necessarily saying, to try and nitpick, because there are some cemeteries, right? Well, you have to have this kind of stone, and you have to have this kind of color in the stone, or here are the colors that are acceptable. I don't think we as a committee want to be that narrow. But on the same side, I mean, for instance, I don't know what it would be, Leo, and I think we could all leave it to our imagination that there could be something that somebody would put on a stone, or a certain kind of stone, that right now, as long as it's within our size parameters, we really wouldn't have a rule to say, well, that's, out of the character of what we want for the cemetery. And by not having any kind of rule other than just size, we start to appear arbitrary in our judgment. And so again, this is kind of the same rule. The language is kind of similar to what we had for the mausoleums, which we also put, so we put similar language in that, so that people who are building a mausoleum can't necessarily, build it in some strange format that we would feel would be uncharacteristic for the cemetery.
Other questions of Brian on this?
I wonder if just adding that actually gives you the opportunity to be more arbitrary, because now you have this paragraph that says if we on the cemetery committee, which changes every few years, it doesn't appeal to our sensibility, then we can reject it. And those sensibilities will change depending on the individuals on the committee. So maybe that makes it more arbitrary in the end. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'd argue that, having 5 people on a committee, we represent the community. And I think certainly standards have changed. I think, if you look at what they were putting in for markers in the 1860s and what we have markers in the 1960s, you can see that there has been kind of a change of markers. And I think that it's okay to have a community standard of what we feel is acceptable. And I think we as community members and representing the town, I think that's where it lies, is the best place. It's not one individual making the decision, but it is a committee that represents the town.
Yeah.
Aaron, go ahead.
I would also state that, so there is in addition to the regulation that was sent out in the packet, so there is a monument application that is filled out and completed by an applicant and signed off by operations. So the installation of all markers and monuments is really an operations function for approval and not the committee's function for approval. The only time the committee sees a monument application is when either the staff feels that it is something that should go before the committee because it is, let's say, questionable, or we might find it a one-off. I give example like the stone that we discussed a few meetings ago, or the applicant is asking for an exception to the specific rules and regulations that are listed on the application. So currently, the committee does not approve or on a regular basis monument applications. That's a approval that is given by the cemetery supervisor or the cemetery superintendent.
So the operations team is sort of a first line of defense against who the hell is Sheila Shea.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. So if there's something that comes up that we feel may be questionable, or we don't feel comfortable approving, even if it falls within the regulations, we're going to bring it before the committee for discussion and review and approval.
I think my concern is that, but there's no rule for the committee to really, reject, because, that without this kind of language, other than saying.
Just as an example, there is on the back of the application, we have to know the shape, design, material, source, dimension, as well as the inscription. And on the back, there is a penalty. Any person who is responsible for installing a monument, marker, inscription, or foundation in violation of this regulation shall be subject to a fine of $100 every 30 days, during which such monument, marker, inscription, or foundation remains in violation of said regulations. So that's what they're signing. Both the lot owner and the monument company sign that they state they understand that prior to the stone being set.
So I think the inscription, so for instance, with the inscription, right? So we're saying that the inscription you put on this application is the inscription you have to put on the stone and you can't alter it. Well, what we don't have a rule is to say, you can't inscribe, some white supremacist language onto your stone. All we're saying is if you say you're going to say a terrible phrase, you have to make sure you put that on a marker using that gravestone. In my understanding, and I'm happy to be wrong, but that's what we're saying with that application. What I'm saying is there are times that issues are raised to this committee and to try and say, here's the stone and it's a little different from all the others. Is this acceptable? And what I'm saying is there's no rule for us to really point to say whether we dislike that, other than did they follow what they said they were going to do on their application, and is it within the appropriate size levels that's within our rules?
Well, I would say that the staff is not going to sign off on anything that's not appropriate for the cemetery. And I guess the term appropriate would vary, it varies, right? What do you feel is appropriate and not appropriate? But I think it's you entrust the professionals that the town hires to make those decisions. And when we don't feel comfortable doing that, we bring it to the higher level. And in this case, is the cemetery committee. So
Brian, I was reading what we already have under Article 5. We've got several paragraphs, One section, there's two sections. One's called permit violations. And it's 2 paragraphs. There's a little bottom paragraph. It says this: the cemetery department, I think that's what Aaron's speaking of, operations, has the ability to remove offensive structures and markers, including offensive wording on markers. Now, let's say somebody did a redo of Sheila Shea, but maybe even more extreme, right? And somehow or other, that got through. I don't know. They wrote one thing on their application, and then lo and behold, there it is, sitting on the ground. This gives the department, this gives Tish and Aaron the right to go in there and put that that stone on a truck and pull it out of there, right? So we do have a backstop to that extent. I think you would like to have a little something, even a little bit greater insurance. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct. Yeah, I would say, you know, we're talking about how the cemetery department or the operations, you know, they say, well, when we have something questionable, we raise it up to you. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you're saying you're raising it up to this committee to make a decision, other than it not meeting the size requirements, which is the only rule that we have in place, I'm not sure what you're raising it up to the cemetery committee to decide. And I would say that we need a rule or something that is general enough to be able to say, when you raise something up to us, that's beyond just the size requirement, that we have something to pin our hat on if we were to reject something.
Brian, one more passage in the already existing rules and regs. This is towards the end of the list. This is called type of memorial. And this seems to be the only place where the committee, except for benches up above, where the committee is specifically mentioned. It's under benches, it says request for the placement of a bench must have prior approval of the committee. Then under type of memorial, it says the committee will consider reasonable exceptions. First it says, there's 2 paragraphs under type. First one says the type of memorial permitted on a particular gravesite will be specified by the department at the time of the purchase of the lot. And then the second paragraph says the committee will consider reasonable exceptions to the prescribed dimensional requirements. We just did that with Ms. Sprague. Upon review of a written proposal consisting of a description and sketch. I guess I would say if it is in some way indicating, language indicates that the committee, and this does a little bit, it says the committee is put in as a place of appeal. It says here, the committee will consider reasonable exceptions. I mean, I don't think you're barking up the wrong tree entirely, but perhaps if the language were added somewhere it already exists, some kind of emendation, mild emendation of what already exists might be the way to go. I get a little pushback from some of the committee, but I don't think it's if it was fine-tuned a little bit, you might have some more success. Jerry, are you having your hand up there? Jerry, no, he just had his hand. That's my thoughts on it.
Terrific. Well, I appreciate being able to voice it. You know, I'm, again, you know, happy to have the discussion, and I appreciate everybody's thoughts on it.
You know, sometimes it's not easy to get 5 people to agree.
No. This is Leo, and I'll tell you what I am concerned about is I don't think we want to be in a position to say something doesn't work because it doesn't agree with our taste. That's a conundrum, and that's what we're heading towards with this type of thing. Like, you know, I hear people saying, oh, we have all these tourists that come in, it's the 5th most important place to come and visit in Concord, but a lot of people come and visit Sheila Shea's grave. So, you know, if we start dictating what is taste and what meets our definition of good taste, that's a slippery slope to start going down. So this is a conundrum. I don't know what to do because I recently read about some monuments that were actually holographs. They weren't even real. And so, you know, as we move ahead with technology, we're going to start seeing, you know, perhaps some things of that nature. And you know, I guess, you know, I agree with Brian, we have to have a mechanism to deal with these things, but I just feel my taste doesn't work for everybody. Everybody else's taste doesn't work for me. So,
Well,
you know, I don't want to get too prescriptive.
Yeah. So Brian, if you can find something that you think you can get by the rest of the gang to add to what we've already got in the rules and regs, try again. You know, I think I don't think you're altogether amiss in what you're doing. And Jerry, just are we going to approve of a holograph or not? You know, so.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear people's thoughts then on, you know, what would get it by. Like I said, this is just a jumping off point, not necessarily the end point. So please, I mean, we're in the meeting. Feel free to tell us what language you accept.
Brian, I'd be happy to work with you offline if you'd like, and review the regulations and maybe come up with something.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's an open door, Brian. I'd walk through that door.
I'm walking through it. I'm walking.
All right. If there's nothing else on this one, shall we go on to the next?
Excuse me, Paul?
Jerry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, I need to excuse myself. Something has come up. It's not, you know, anyway, I need to excuse myself. I have to leave them. Thanks very much.
Jerry, I'm sorry that you have to go. I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, it's not crazy or anything like that, but I do need to go. Thanks.
All right. Update on committee priority projects. D7, Mausoleum lots. Aaron, did you have something you wanted to say?
Absolutely, yeah. So just if you'd like, I can give you a couple updates on what's going on with those 3 items. So Mausoleum lots this week are currently being marked out by our engineering group. So that should be done hopefully by the end of the week. Both the old section and in the knoll. So total of 5 lots will be marked. So I think that'll close that one out. Nice job.
Yes, you know, it's been on our list for about who knows how long, and it's nice to see something completed. Well done, everybody. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Record scanning is ongoing. Boston Scan is continuing to scan documents. We haven't gone live with it to the public because it's still being developed, but hopefully in the next coming months that'll be squared away. So that one is ongoing. Headstone Restoration is going to take a pause for at least a couple of months. We are in some transition right now within my department. We had somebody leave, and we're filling some other roles. So we're having to kind of shift our priority projects around a little bit. I anticipate, though, by the end of the fiscal year, getting 2 years worth of headstones solicited for bids and get it out, and get some pricing and get those done. So it's still a game plan to get the $20,000 worth of stones done over the summertime. Just going to be, previous meetings we discussed having it already kind of out to bid, but unforeseen delays. So
hopefully by July or August, we'll be able to get good. Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Aaron. D8, master plan continued discussion. Tree planting, erosion reduction plan, Leo.
Yeah, well, Aaron and Eric, I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and Aaron, thank you very much. And what we have seen is that where the Melvin brothers are buried, there's been a big effort put into replanting, and it just hasn't quite worked out yet. And so it's almost like we're throwing good money after bad. So what we decided to do is on 2 lots, one of them is Ephraim Wales' Bull lot, and the other is where the Verrill lot is heading up towards Author's Ridge. We're going to try some plantings on those that will, where we will learn what we have to do to use in other places. The topsoil is in a very deteriorated condition, and it's going to take a lot of work in a bunch of places. It includes replacing trees to try to block out some of the burning sun, things of that nature. But for right now, we're going through this learning process, and these two lots, Aaron and Eric, we thought this might be the best place to get started to see what we can do to make it succeed. Because even after putting all that time and effort into the Melvin, the burial places for the Melvins, it hasn't succeeded. So there's a learning process going on right now, and it's not only with the cemetery. I'm also a member of the Concord Land Conservation Trust, and their vegetation and trees and all are being impacted by a number of variables. So what we're looking at is as we get into warmer and warmer ambient temperatures and ground temperatures, we got to look at different types of vegetation to accommodate these climatic changes that are taking place. And it appears that there's some literature out there about it, but no one really has definitive answers on these things. So it's on a case-by-case basis. So we're going with these two to start to see what works and what might not work. And I'm also very interested in what the Friends are doing, because maybe Pachysandra and things like that are a good solution in places where we're getting a lot of erosion. Perhaps that type of a solution would be appropriate, because it would keep the heavy lawnmowers and things that cause part of the erosion off of the lot. So we're looking at some types of grasses that don't grow as high and don't need to be cut as often, and things of that nature. So I'm pretty enthusiastic about the direction we're going in, but like climate change, this isn't going to happen too fast. It just happens over time. So we're pointed in the right direction, and we're starting off. And correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but I think it was either within the next 2 months, these lots will be, they'll have some loam brought in and some new topsoil, and the plantings will take place in the next 2 months.
Correct, Leo.
Yeah,
Great, that's great. Were you able to touch base with the folks at the University of Massachusetts Extension Service?
well, the town already does that, and we have had samples in the past. I don't think we're gonna. The answer is no, but I'm not sure we would have gotten a lot from that anyways. I think we're doing the right thing. It's funny, Paul. I don't want to waste everybody's time, but I got so many of the old Concord annual reports from like the 1800s, and I've been reading about them. It's so interesting the way this town has learned how to do things like make roads and stuff like that. You read in the early 1800s, they didn't know what to do, so they experimented on their own and came up with a couple of failures, but eventually got it to where it's a pretty good system. So we're doing the same thing with this in a smaller scale.
Great. It sounds like you got a plan. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next point under the master plan. The columbarium with Andrea. Jerry's left, but Andrea and Jerry are working on this together.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
I know, my phone is running out of power, but so yes, Jerry and I are meeting tomorrow. Our committee is meeting in the knoll, in the new part of the cemetery at 11. And we're just going to further discuss design. I know Jerry has a slide presentation he might have been intending to show us, but it's really just more design and ideas and methods of columbarium that you can use. So we're just going to keep that ball rolling, but really what needs to come next is the budget and then the design specs that we need. So that'll come more from Tish and Aaron, I think.
Have you guys been in touch have you been talking to Tish and Aaron about budget issues to do with how to pay for the columbarium?
Well, I think that the budget will be in the next, but not this year's budget, but the next year's budget. And then I guess we'll go from there.
Okay. Did we set aside some money to do some exploration of this? Is that correct? Or am I misremembering?
He talked about earmarking some money in the FY22 budget.
But we haven't done that.
The budget was submitted, the budget request, and the way that the capital funding for cemetery projects, it's all like $40,000 of priority projects. Is how it's worded.
All right.
Again, from a department standpoint, we're going to earmark. We talked about earmarking, I think, $10,000 of that for a potential design.
Okay, so 10,000 will hopefully be set aside for a potential design.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrea. Repair and underdeveloped land use, Brian Davidson.
Great, thanks, Paul. Yeah, just, continuing to monitor kind of developments on the reformatory branch, which have been limited with the bicycle subcommittee of the transportation committee has met and stuff, but they haven't really had a lot of discussions on the reformatory trail. So able to sit in on one of the NRC's presentations by Brian Windmiller, also a resident of Concord, but also of Zoo, New England. And he's been studying the landing turtles, which we shared the report that Brian had sent me, which has a lot of activity in the Moore Swamp area, which is part of our land. And it's, fascinating stuff. The turtles live, 70, 80 years. Brian is putting transmitters on their shells and monitoring them as they move around. So he has offered to come and speak to our committee if we wished. He gave a nice 10-minute kind of presentation to the NRC. So it's not a large presentation, but just I think some of the next steps that they're trying to do for the landing turtles that are in Moore Swamp is to develop vegetation that benefit the turtles. So it could be interesting to hear how the committee could help him in that process or what he's doing in that process. But I'd leave it up to council members if they wanted to hear from Brian. And then also, I know we've been working on the signs, but I don't know, Aaron, if that's still something in process.
Yes, the signs have been, we requested proofs, we sent the verbiage and the design to our sign company. So they're designing a proof for us. And as soon as I have the proof back, I'll share that with the committee.
So you guys, Brian, you and Aaron worked on the language on those signs already?
Yeah, I think we, in our committee, we had talked a little bit about the signage, about the language.
Justine, do you have what the language is?
Yep, hold on one second. Sorry, just have to find it. It was what was cited at the one of the committee meetings.
Sorry, to put you on the
So
spot.
it's gonna say, sorry, it will say Sleepy Hollow Cemetery is an active burial ground. Please use these grounds quietly and respectfully. All dogs must be leashed. And there'll be 12 by 18, not landscape, portrait with either a dark, probably a dark green background. And then we're gonna try either a gold or white lettering, depending on, and we're gonna see what looks better. And with a town seal on it.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
So we agreed, I think we talked about, we're not gonna put anything to do with bicycles on there.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll get the proofs. We'll look at the proofs. We'll see which one kind of looks better visually. And then we're gonna end up ordering probably at least 4 of them. Put a couple up and have a spare on the shelf in case we need in the future.
So where will the 4, remind me where the 4, these potentially 4 would go?
Along the reformatory branch system where their trailheads are entering into the cemetery. And then again at the footbridge right before Vesper Circle.
Okay. So it's essentially covering the back.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Committee members, any thoughts or questions on any of this to Brian or Aaron?
I have a question or a suggestion. I don't remember when we had the discussion about not mentioning anything about bicycles, but this time of year, people ride their bikes across the graves and it leaves ruts. It might be appropriate to have on that sign, please do not ride your bicycles off the paved surfaces, or something to that effect, because I go out there every morning and I'm seeing fresh marks right across graves where people ridden their bicycles.
Okay, that's important. Other thoughts on that?
Can I say something? Hi, it's Barbara Kaiser.
Yes, Barbara, tell us where you live.
I live at 1 Lexington Road, right next to Old Hill Burying Ground.
Okay.
Yeah. Would love to see a sign about the dogs here. And just, I mean, I think it would be great, or maybe put one in all cemeteries, because people do walk around and let their dogs unleashed and do whatever they want, wherever they want. Shows up a lot in the snow, but not so much in the spring until you walk on it. And very interesting comment about the bicycles from Leo. I never realized that happened. That's deplorable.
Yeah.
So maybe a separate sign for that, maybe? I don't know. This is my first meeting, by the way, so I'm glad to be a participant and listen in.
And we're looking for committee members.
Yeah, I know you are.
Well, we've got, as I mentioned, we have 2 green cards here. I got one on.
You didn't get mine.
No, we have one on. We received on March 10th from Rod Rydell. Rod, where are you? There's Rod. Welcome, Rod. And we also received one 10 days later from Rebecca Purcell. Rebecca, you're here.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you. And nice to see you, Barbara.
Thank you so much.
So we've kicked this bicycle thing around a little bit. I think there's concern on the committee. I think, I don't know exactly what to say at this point. Aaron, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would recommend we move forward with the signs as proposed, and we install them and continue to monitor the situation.
All right. Other thoughts?
Well, I mean, Leo, where do you see it most often? I was just curious.
Well, you know where Sam Hoare's grave is? Well, if you're looking at the front of the Melvin Memorial, and then you turn your back around and start looking up at that this little hill there, we have some of these drainage areas that were built in the late 1800s where these rocks help with the drain. So sometimes the bikes go down those and then turn off. And as they turn off, they rut up this one spot where there's about 12 graves of children that died in the 1950s, and their families didn't have a lot. So they just, it's like where children are buried. And it just, I saw one this morning and it was a pretty deep rut. And I reflect on what Tish has to put up with to see that. She's trying to maintain this. And, it just makes it so hard when people kind of thoughtlessly just drive across these graves. And so if we had something to remind people, it might help with this problem.
Saw that yesterday, Leo. I was up there with Eric and I saw those marks and I said to Eric, what made these? Because it's so random. It's not a lawnmower.
Yeah.
And
it's a bike. It's a bike. Yeah.
Now, I think that Aaron's, and I think Brian, you might have said something before about this, the argument against it is that people, how are you going to enforce it? In other words, you have, but I mean, that's what I've heard. Now, I'm not, I've made it clear before that I'm not happy about bicycles in the cemetery unless they're on the paved surfaces, but yeah. We had some difficulty getting unanimity about what to do regarding that.
How about cameras and trees?
Again, Barbara, who's going to monitor those cameras? Who's going to check those pictures? It's pretty tough.
I think we need to appoint Leo.
But
Well, I started at 350,000 a year, and I'm going to expect some benefits on top of that too. So yeah, I'll look at pictures all day long.
Absolutely.
So I think that we all are concerned about the issue, but we haven't yet hit upon the precise steps. What we have is the first step, which is the signs that we've talked about and that Aaron is now working on getting to go along the back of the cemetery. It is true that bicyclists take shortcuts from the cemetery, reformatory trail through the cemetery. But I think most of those guys, not all, but most of them just want to stay on the pipe surface and get out to Bedford Street. But some of the kids I've seen too, it's like dirt bikes. They like the trails because some of them are steep. Like the one that's just when you just come in the cemetery and you go up where Cat's Pond is, up towards Author's Mill. That's a favorite spot there for daredevil kids.
Well, it's not just kids. I was there yesterday, and there was a kid and somebody who, I don't know his age, but was much more the senior than the junior. And he could go down.
Were they gonna bike down that space?
Oh yeah, quite easily. Right by the Arthur's Ridge parking spot there down to Cat's Pond, that area.
So what would be a suggestion about what to do about that, if anything?
Well, I would suggest that we put some type of a barrier that people could walk through, but the bikes could not easily fit through, and say foot traffic only. I see those bikes pretty consistently, and they do a lot of, they really do some rutting and erosion in that particular spot. It's pretty severe. You ought to take a walk down and just see. After a rainy day, there'll be tire marks all through it.
All right, here's what I suggest. I suggest we put this on the agenda and discuss it again next time. We want to try to finish what we're doing today. This has come up. This is not the first or the second. It's come up several times, so I think we need to address it again. Meanwhile, let's go ahead with Plan A, if that's okay with everybody.
And just one question, Paul. Did you want to talk with Brian Windmiller? Does the group want to talk with him, or is the report enough for you guys? For folks?
That's a good question. Did you get a chance to see the report on the blanding turtles? I enjoyed looking at the pictures, especially.
Yeah.
Do you folks want to invite this gentleman to come and talk to us? Or my point to Brian was, it's interesting, but how is it precisely relevant to what we're up to as a committee?
Well, and Brian, thank you very much for bringing this up. I think we should have him come and talk to us, because it is an endangered species, and there are certain laws that are put into effect associated with those. And if those are on some of these trails that the bikers are damaging, then now we've got a little bit of an enforcement mechanism available to us, which we wouldn't have without that. So I think it would behoove us to listen to what this person has to say, and maybe ask him a few questions too.
Yeah.
Andrea, what do you think?
Sorry. Yes, I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree. I would love to hear from Brian. He has incredibly interesting and relevant information. So I think it would be great to hear.
I think we would like to invite him. Let's do it, Brian. Maybe
okay, I'll reach out to him.
Arrange that for next time. I had to say, a few years ago, I was walking back where Cat's Pond is, and I saw a turtle this big with a transmitter on it. I said, poor turtle's carrying that antenna around all the time. But I know that it's important for them to do that. And I know that they wander around our cemetery. So I'm sure Tish has seen them a lot of times.
I don't know the difference between them and snappers, so I stay away. But we have had nests of them that we've reported to Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the ones with the antennas are the blandings.
That would be a good sign for me. That I could do.
All right. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. This is the mausoleum sites in the area, and Brian's already talked about that. I think we can strike that from our list. Finally, and this is Mr. Burkett is here with us. Mr. Burkett, thank you for coming. Your email prompted me to ask Tish, and then Tish got back to us. I relayed it to you. I think the history of that section of the cemetery is worth reviewing. So I thought we'd take a few minutes before we close out today, reviewing that. And I'm glad you're here to listen to it because it's quite an interesting history. I've been on the committee for 7 years and had never heard this before until the past few weeks. So I don't think the other members of the committee are familiar with it either. However, we have Tish with us and she knows all about it, or at least an awful lot about it. So I'd like to ask you, Tish, if you would sort of lead us with a brief discussion of the history of the new area.
The committee members have the copies of both the original design of the new section and then the meeting minutes following that. There was an original design that was done in the early 80s.
Yeah.
I can't see a date on it. I don't know if engineering has it, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's the design that was supposed to be done for the new section of the cemetery in the early 80s. And in 1989, the cemetery chair, Betsy Baker, thought it would make sense to have Bill Clendaniel, who was a town resident and current and newly appointed president of Mount Auburn Cemetery, come to speak to the committee. So he did. He, at Mount Auburn, said that they were having issues because they had run out of space. So they were getting creative with making new areas, taking roads out, doing different things, and that we needed to think along those lines now, not later. So the committee decided to, one, completely change the design that had already been implemented down in Chestnut Hollow, and two, redesign the new area. So I think in-house was done more so for Chestnut Hollow, but he also said that coincidentally his newly retired boss, Duncan Monroe, had opened a landscape design company and would be more than happy to come in and design this for us. So that's who we hired.
So in short, if I understand correctly, the original plan was much more in harmony with what we have in the old section.
Yep.
And it was, you were close to implementing it. And then you invited someone from Mount Auburn to come in and talk to you. And he said, oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Okay, so there you are, Mr. Burkett. That's the story. Now, we haven't done this plan, the picture of which, the whole back part going all the way to Reformatory Road, Reformatory.
Right, I noticed that it does go back to that railroad. So, yeah, I was very disappointed when I went up there. I've lived across the street from Sleepy Hollow for 34 years. We've enjoyed it immensely. You do an amazing amount of work, all of you, and we very appreciate that work. And we've just really enjoyed walking and spending time in the cemetery and this rural movement that I learned about reading about this a little bit, you know, for the use of, you know, normal everyday people to enjoy the cemetery. So on the occasion of my wife's death, her ashes are in the dining room. At the end of the winter, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to proceed, what the options were, and got in touch with Tish. Showed me the site at the Knoll, which it's only right down the street, but I'd never really had an occasion to go there. And I was just so disappointed and struck by the presentation in comparison to the old section. And looking at this original plan, I mean, why didn't they do that? I mean, it would have been so, you know, I can't understand it. I mean, I just want to, like, I'm approaching this as a customer, as a consumer, I have a lot of questions, but if you have any feedback on it, it'd be great. I mean, I'm looking for some shade, some taller trees, a little bit of privacy, a place to go and sit and reflect. And so some of these things are obviously out of our control now. You're out of your control. These were decisions that were made 25 years ago. Even when after they had abandoned this idea of the meandering paths and more the design that we're used to in the old cemetery, there's a paragraph in here where they proposed 7 matching red maples to be planted, which, you know, after 25 years, they would be 40 or 50 feet now. Could you imagine that over there? That would just be gorgeous, but I don't know why. I have no reason why that was eliminated. So I don't know what I'm going to do now. The section for the cremation, I know Tish mentioned that they're thinking of walkways or thinking of a little more barrier plantings to separate the separation from the housing development that's right on the edge of the property there. I mean, I went over there and sat on the bench near the plot where I'm thinking of purchasing, I guess. For instance, I was there on Easter afternoon, and there was, kids playing an Easter egg hunt, barbecues. I mean, people, I mean, it's great. They're allowed to live their lives, but 25 feet away is just not giving me the privacy or the quiet that I'm hoping for to sit. So that raises another question, maybe more that you have some control over, is why does it have to be there? I mean, you have acres and acres of land. You have I know you have all the woods you don't want to develop yet, but why can't more people use the sections that are over near the woods, away from the residential section? Why do we have to be shoved up against the residents? I mean, I know eventually that'll have to be developed as you reach, as the cemetery fills, but why does that have to be the choice? I mean, and also it's just a visual barrier. I feel like if anywhere in that whole knoll, you can be seen from anywhere. I don't see people. I can't imagine people would choose to walk there and spend time there if they have the choice just down the street of the old cemetery. I mean, there would be no. I mean, what would you choose to do? Where would you be? You would not be at the knoll. So I'm wondering maybe like some other visual barriers that don't take years to create, like rhododendrons. I know there's a lot of rhododendrons in this old section. They create like little walls or little sections that could give you some visual barrier from the rest of the cemetery, a little privacy. I don't know. So those are my thoughts.
Well, thank you, Bob. I think that the limitations are really to do with the will. The cemetery has, so many things that it can be doing, and we as you see from our agenda, we have priorities. We say, well, what should we address first? And we have our list. And if there's somebody, or if there's a consensus on the committee that it's time to push for something, then, for example, the mausoleum site, just a small example, we didn't have any for sale 7 years ago, but it occurred, the need arose. And it took time. It took 5 years, 6 years for it to happen. But somebody was pushing for it, so it happened. So I think all the town committees, some of them have they respond to whatever the latest emergency is, which is important. But it's also important to sort of have goals. If you don't have goals, you'll never reach them.
I'd be curious to know have you had this kind of feedback from people? Or
not particularly, I haven't, but we have a master plan, and that is also a subjective thing. It was put together by a subcommittee of this committee, and we've been using it to take steps to do new things. But I absolutely agree with you that this is worth pushing. It requires time and initiative and patience. But I completely agree with you that it's a pity that the old plan was not. They're still burying people in Mount Auburn Cemetery. They haven't run out of room. They've found ways to do it and still keep Mount Auburn Cemetery a very attractive place. We might have gone with that plan that the president of Mount Auburn discouraged us from going, but that's water under the bridge. However, there are other things that could still be done. I don't know what they are, and my time as a chair is rapidly coming to an end. But it's like so many things in our town. If you want something to happen, you have to push for it. The folks who wanted a new middle school have been pushing and pushing, and looks like they're going to get it. And so on. But you can't give up quickly, and you have to. That's how things are in a democracy.
I was at the old manse today, and I happened to talk to the landscaper there, the gentleman who's down there every day. And there's they planted red maple at the back near the boathouse there. It's almost 30 feet tall, and they only planted it like. I'll
tell you something, Bob. If you came to every cemetery committee, and you were like, who was it? Pliny the Elder. After every speech, he would say, and Carthage must be destroyed, right? No matter what the discussion was, because he wanted Carthage destroyed, the Roman. if you came to every cemetery committee and at the end of it, when the community comments came up, you said, and I want 10 red maples planted in the knoll, after a while, people would give you what you want just to get rid of you.
Maybe I'll do that.
All I'm saying is, you're right, but you have to push for it. You have to. It's the only way things happen.
Mhm.
But I tell you what, I completely agree with you. More could be done over there, and it should be more in conformity to what we have in the old part. People, the committee back then, they heard the evidence and they made a choice, the best choice they knew how to make at the time. And now, looking 25 years back, we think we know better. But it's now the future lies before us. And for my part, I agree with you. We should do more in the new part.
Okay, so I push for red maples and opening up another section closer to the woods.
All right. All right. And I hear you. And we can talk more about that. And by all means, keep coming and reminding the committee. Anybody have any comments for Bob or on this subject at all?
I appreciate Bob coming forward and sharing his thoughts. I mean, as you say, 25 years, maybe for next year, to bring somebody in to just, see where we're at, as we kind of did with our master plan, we kind of revisit it. I don't know, maybe 25 years, maybe there's time to revisit it and get thoughts to see, are we online? Are we progressing as we had hoped 25 years ago? Just to get a kind of a check-in, but for next year's plan, maybe we could put that on.
When Andrea and Whitney put together the master plan a few years ago, they called for revisiting it every year. Take a look at it every year and see what we're going to do. And we sort of try and do that. That's what this whole thing is on our agenda right now. That's what we're doing. We're reviewing the master plan issues, but there's nothing that's stopping new things getting put on there. So anything else?
So as a Concord resident, what are the options for a Concord resident looking for a spot in a cemetery? That's the only place, right?
Tish.
That's where we're currently selling. The only other option available currently is St. Bernard's.
Yeah. Now there's all that area, from the back of the current area where Tish, all the way back to the Reformatory Trail. That's all woods. That could be developed in a beautiful way. But that is a big job pushing that. As Ms. Purcell was saying, back in the early days, way back, years ago, 3 decades, let's restore the Melvin Memorial. Well, we just did it. It took a long time. Things take time, unless you're ruled by, Xi Jinping, who orders people around. If they don't do what he says, they send them to the West to concentration camps. That's not what we have here, thank God. So I better not get into that. So I think now it's time. I think we've done with all our things on the agenda. Is that correct?
I think we D9 committee comments.
Committee comments.
Thank you all very much for listening to me. Appreciate it.
It's your town, your committee. You're welcome to come anytime. Please come again.
Okay. And we're looking for new committee members.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. That I think both Rebecca and Rob have submitted their green card, and I invited them to come. And I think we've got 2 good candidates here. They've stuck with us this whole 2 hours. And I invite you to come again.
You give me a plot back by the woods, and I'll be a committee member.
All right. So, any public comments? Last call.
Oh, one last thing. I attended I attend the Sleepy Hollow Friends meetings, and there is one member who is suggesting that we add more of those signs on the trees, and it hasn't gone through the whole Sleepy Hollow committee, Friends committee approval yet, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that it's a discussion that's taking place, and I think this individual wants to put a lot in, and I think we got to be more realistic about what we can do. Maybe a few more, but certainly not half the trees, which was the suggestion.
Half the trees. Okay. All right.
Yeah. And then I actually sent the software program that we have on the town line, Tree Keeper, and I think there's about 50,000 trees in the cemetery, all the property. So it's they've got to put more thought into it. I just want to give you a heads up. That's one of the things they're planning on discussing in the future.
Thank you very much, Leo.
You're welcome.
I want to thank everyone for their patience in coming and spending 2 hours with us. It's great to, also especially want to thank Rod Rydell and Rebecca Purcell for coming. And you're in line. You're the first two in line for the spots that are going to open up not too far in the future. So keep coming. And Bob, I appreciate you coming, and I think you were heard today. I don't know what we can do, but it was good to hear from you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justine, for being with us and for doing the minutes. Aaron, thank you. And thank you. Oh, well, one last thing here. I just want to tip my hat to Tish. I saw that the memorial to George Dugan has been placed is being placed or has been placed. It's being placed.
Hopefully in Monument Square, but we're still in the process.
Yeah, Tish and Rick Fries, who's also on the Friends of Sleepy Hollow, worked together to put together a memorial to the only African-American soldier in the Union Army during the Civil War who came from Concord. And they have put together a memorial plaque, which is going to be put hopefully at the base of the Civil War monument in the central square of Concord. So, and there was a piece in the Concord Journal about that. You can see that. I still didn't get the Concord Journal sent to me down here in Texas. All right. So if there's nothing further, for follow-up, we're going to talk next time a little bit about bicycling again, bicycles in the cemetery, the problem with bike tracks on the graves. We're going to talk a little bit. We'll have the gentleman from the Blandings Turtle come and talk about that.
I'll ask them. I don't know.
If you can, let us know. And I think we can maybe talk a little bit. We find a way to discuss in the master plan where we have discussions about the new area and its development. We can touch on that. That's Mr. Burkett's interest. And I think perhaps we can just see what the master plan has to say and talk about maybe what could be added there. All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Brian Davidson motions that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Andrea Solomon seconds it. All right. Leo, how do you vote?
I third it.
Okay, Leo says aye. I say aye. I think Andrea and Brian are saying aye. So we'll say adios until next time to everyone.
Right.
Thank you for joining.
God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.